open wounds. I am ripping off the bandages on these still bleeding scars, hoping they will heal more quickly. If I can just let them breathe, if you can just let me be. And then my response 5 years later is called My Healing Heart. And these scars no longer bleed, and finally I can breathe.
The French painter Georges Braque said art is a wound turned into light. Two things I have to call out as soon as I say something like that is that one, I am sure that I mispronounced his name, and I apologize to anyone who is French, speaks French, or enjoys anything France related. I did my best. The second thing is that I did not get that quote from him. I actually got that from the professional wrestler Bret Hart. Say all of that to say, I love that quote. I love it because art, whether it is visual, musical, or just words, can be such a great way to heal. Healing takes many forms for many people, and my guest this week, author Michelle Malon, has released 2 books of poetry inspired by the passing of her mother. The first one was When It Was Still Raw, and the second one is 5 years later, her responding to her own poems. Michelle was kind enough to share so much with me this week. Her story, her pain, laughs, joy, and even her art. You're going to hear some of her poems throughout this episode, as well as responses that she's written to them. I appreciate the courage to not only write these words dealing with something so tragic, but to share them so far and so wide, to share them on this platform, on this podcast, with this audience. I will say, as a trigger warning, the show does talk about death, so please be mindful as you listen. I hope you enjoy the episode this week. If you do, please take time to like, subscribe, share, rate, and review, whatever you can do. With that, we'll get into the episode.
Death. The dead give no answers. They leave only questions in their wake. Questions, questions, and heartache. And then my response 5 years later is life. I have filled my life with love. I have found so many answers. I have sought soulful solace, and I have found peace.
Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is author, poet, and mentor, Michelle Malon. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such a great pleasure to talk with you tonight. I'm really excited because I always like talking to authors and poets, especially. So I'll go ahead and just kind of get ahead of myself here. I'm gonna have some poetry readings here in the show, and I'm just super excited for that. So I appreciate you joining me to talk, to share, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Some of the poems are darker, some of them are lighter. So yeah, it should definitely be interesting.
Yeah. And now you have 4 books of poetry that you've released, correct?
Yes, I do. They're all on Amazon. I just did a relaunch of of Open Wounds, which was my first collection of poetry that was largely inspired by my mother's death. And that was released about 5 years ago. And I did a follow-up book this year called My Healing Heart. And actually, if you open the book Open Wounds to page 7, you can read the response 5 years later on page 7 of My Healing Heart. Like, they correspond, the poems. So it's really interesting. My Healing Heart's definitely a lot lighter. You can see where I've grown. It's just, yeah. And then I have 2 other collections too. One's love poems and one's called Sad Girl Quotes. That one's kind of about breakups.
Yeah.
But they're all
Hey, super relatable, right?
They're very, yes, I would say that is probably the thing I hear the most about my poetry is that it's very relatable if you've been through any type of anything, trauma, heartache, grief, loss, love. If you've been through anything, you can. I feel like I have poetry for people who love poetry and for people who don't really like poetry. I write. I'm the every person's poet.
Yeah,
Um, so a little bit of everything.
I love that. And you know, I, I, I'm not going to pretend to be any kind of expert in poetry, but I mean, I don't think there's anyone who can't relate to poetry. I think it's just finding the thing that does relate to you, that does speak to you. Because when you read that first poem that you really do feel on a visceral level, it will hit you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, definitely. And I have some that I'll be reading later that still, even today, I'm like, when I wrote this, I remember these feelings and they still can hit me. And um, yeah, just, I don't want to say be dramatic, but I mean, poetry can be dramatic. It can bring me to my knees, even, you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
so, like, they really, some are hard hitters and others are silly and fun and cute and it's kind of it's a wide ranging art. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Now, let me ask you this: how long have you been writing? I know you said that your first book came out about 5 years ago, but how long have you actually been writing poetry?
I mean, I think really since high school, since I discovered poetry, I mean, I would always write and I would write poems in the shower and like just have them in my head. And then once I got out, I would scribble them down as fast as I could. Um, I used to, back then, I would do a lot of rhyming. And I love that exercise of trying to think of all the words that you can rhyme with, you know, whatever else that fits in the rhythm structure. I love the art of that. My poems these days, I try not to rhyme as much because I find once I start rhyming, I can't really stop myself. Like it just I get into such a flow and a habit, and it starts to like everything. I don't know. It kind of mushes together. But actually, speaking of my beginning writing, I wrote a poem and my mom actually in high school found a collection of my poetry and she submitted a couple of them to a publisher and I got published in
Oh
some
wow!
collection of poetry that I don't even know where it is now or what it was called or I don't even remember the poem, but it was some collection of like great American poets or something. I don't even know how she found it, but she just submitted it to some contest and I won. And I
Oh
was
wow!
published in this book that I like I don't even know, and that's the sad thing is she would know, she would be able to find this information and I'm like I have no idea what it was called, what the poem was called. I have no idea how to find it and she would be like I have a copy of that book. And I'm like she would know where it was. And she kept everything. So yeah.
So, well, that, okay, that kind of, I think that's a great way to segue into our topic. And I know you wanted to talk about your mother. Um, I have a question I want to ask you about her, but I want to first. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your mother?
Um, yeah, sure. My mom was really a great mom. The last few years of her life were very complicated, our relationship. It was just difficult. And then she kind of, because I struggle with some mental illness, and that's something that I like to talk about. And I think she was having some struggles and kind of she stopped taking care of herself as much and I
Yeah.
really believe that that's one of the reasons why they didn't catch her cancer right away is because she wasn't going and getting checkups like she should and she had breast cancer and it spread really quickly though, so even if they had caught it sooner, who knows, and there's I've
Yeah.
gone over so many times in my head, what if, but I mean, yeah, she was a great mom, very generous, like overly generous, a little scatterbrained. Um, I'm just thinking of her like losing everything in her purse, or we would never know. Like if we went to the mall, she would never remember which parking lot. like we were in, and I spent so much of my time trying to find a car, and her clicking, when we got the keys that would click, and the listening for the beep in the parking lot and try to find the car. Like that was just, she was just a little scatterbrained. But I mean, she worked a few different jobs. She was a hustler, a hard worker.
Yeah.
Not because she had to, but because when she was younger, she had to. But when we were kids, I think she worked, like she took on private cases. She was an occupational therapist, working with kids with special needs. And she would work in a preschool and then go do some after school program and then take private cases sometimes. And she had 4 kids. I'm one of 4, and she would bring us to all of our sports and after school activities. And I don't even know, I don't even know how she kept up with all those things. Like I did dance and soccer, lacrosse. My brother did soccer, track, like everybody did. Oh, and I did swimming. I can't believe I skipped swimming. Swimming was like my big sport. And there was every season. We did a sport in every season or an activity in every season. And she had 4 kids and she was dragging us all to every activity. I'm like, how did she do this? Like she was just Wonder Woman. I don't know how she did it. And she worked. Like it was just, and yeah, so I'm like, I don't even know. I don't know how she did it. I don't know. It was amazing. So she was great. Yeah, and then like I said, like I think really after her parents died, they died within a few months of each other. She really struggled with that, and then kind of like I think her mental health wasn't the best the last few years. And she had
Yeah.
she had a tough life, and she was a hard worker. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you so much for talking about her. I mean, I can just hearing you talk about her, I can tell how much she. I'm gonna frame this as means not meant, and this is a really weird, probably side note, but I was having actually a conversation with a coworker today, and the idea of loss and grief came up, and she kind of corrected me whenever I was talking about somebody in my family, and she said, it's not that they meant something, it's that they mean something to you. So
yes,
really weird side note, but I can hear it in
yeah.
your voice talking about how much she still means to you, and I mean that's beautiful. And I'm going to go back to the question I had at first, and
Yeah.
thank you for telling me a little bit more about her. You said that she found some of your writing and she submitted it for you. Was that just her? Was she always that supportive? Because I know that especially teenage
Oh,
years, getting a parent and a child on the same page is not easy.
yeah, she was definitely supportive. A little bit, some of that's also like a boundary thing. Like, I don't know how she found it. I'm like, what were you just gone through my diary or whatever? To be fair, I know she had the best intentions. If she was going looking for, if she was looking through something, like she probably just found a notebook, was like,
Yeah.
it was probably like open or whatever. And she goes, what is this? Where, she was probably had good intentions, but also she was a little snooping a little, which she would,
Yeah.
she was definitely snooping a little. But I mean, can you blame her for snooping on your teenage daughter? If you're not, the most taught. I mean, she and I don't know. So yeah, she was always supportive, a little bit, a little bit snooping. I don't know another good word for that, but like investigative, maybe.
Yeah.
But she was always supportive. I mean, when I was even younger, I actually wanted to be like a writer since I was really little. Like, I mean, like as soon as I learned how to write, I always wanted to write books, and I would draw pictures and try to like write children's books for other kids. Like I remember I wrote this story, I drew it on construction paper. It was about a mermaid. I just remember trying to draw a mermaid and like writing this whole story. And she would be like, yeah, like let's write letters to the publishers and let's see if we can get your story. And it's like, she's just trying to be like, just, just very supportive. Yeah, she was always, yes, very supportive of pretty much everything. I mean, she definitely had ideas of what she wanted me to do. She had her own idea of me in her head, but I think she was also very realistic and liked to
Yeah.
encourage things. Like I would put on these dance shows with my younger brother, and she would always I would make my younger brother learn choreography in our living room, and she would just be like, and then she signed me up for dance lessons. You know what I mean? Like, she was just very much like, oh, Michelle loves to dance. Great. We'll get her in dance lessons as soon as possible. Like, I'm talking about when I was like 3 and my little brother's like 2. Like,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit older than that. But some of my first memories are me like turning music on and being like, we have to make up this dance, and like I don't know about forcing my little brother, but definitely somehow convincing him he's not a dancer. Like, that's not really his thing. Um, Somehow convincing him to follow choreography, and like my mom being like, seeing that and going, okay, dance lessons for Michelle. You know what I mean? Like, she definitely was very good about things like that. Yeah.
That I love that. I love that because I'm a parent to a 6-year-old, and I try to, you want to try to be supportive of your kid whenever they show interest in something. I will say, like, it's at the age of 6, it's everything's interesting, and so it can jump from one thing to another really quick. I love though that she was so supportive. Were any of these things that she was interested in, like, was she into poetry or writing, or is that just something that she saw that you loved, and so it was a kind of maybe, I don't know if olive branch is the right word, but that kind of, okay, let me see if I can connect this way.
She she really loved to read. So maybe I know she did. She loved to read. I mean, and she would read a lot of mystery novels. I know that we would be at the library all the time, just picking out books, and sometimes, and she would always lie on the couch. I could have like a mental image of her lying on the couch reading a book, halfway through closing it, going, "I already read this one."
At the halfway point.
She's like, I just remember. Yeah, like, she'd be like a few chapters in and be like, oh, I just remembered what happens in this book. Like, because she read so much that she couldn't possibly keep track of every single story, and she would just, and they were mystery. And sometimes she would reread it, and she would go, oh, okay, I remember what happens. I'm going to keep reading this. It was a good book. Or she'll go, oh, I remember what happens. I didn't like the ending. And then she'd just close it and bring it back to the library. But she just read so much. So, I mean, maybe that could be where my love of writing comes from. She was a big reader, for sure. That was like her number one, I would say, hobby would be reading. I just picture her always with a book. Just always with a book and watching soap operas. Those are really, she loves a good dramatic story.
Hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with liking drama.
Yeah, I agree.
No.
I mean, yeah, General Hospital was like that was her favorite, that one. And Guiding Light, I think she said she watched it until the series, like the whole finale of the entire soap opera. And I think she watched it from the time she was like a kid, and she watched like through the whole, like as many episodes as she could.
Wow.
I think it was called Guiding Light, something like that. Lighthouse of Guiding Light. I don't know.
No,
I don't remember.
I don't know why I know this, but I think Guiding Light is I think that is the OG of. I think that is the OG of soap operas, and I think it was like the longest running like episodic television show at some point.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that was she used to watch that one. She watched, I remember, I remember her watching the whole series finale. Like, that I remember. That was a big deal. Yeah, which I don't even know. I guess it was mostly summers, because she worked in a school, so she only watched the soap operas in the summer, because otherwise she was at work. So I'm like, why would we both be home? I guess it was summer. Yeah.
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 Well, so did you and her ever talk about your writing? I know that she found it. I know she submitted it, but did you ever like sit down and discuss the writing? Would you have her proofread for you, or was it too personal?
No, I was too embarrassed. It was too personal. I was definitely embarrassed. I still get embarrassed about sharing a lot of my writing with people who know me. I think because a lot, like, okay, my mom's best friend, I was just speaking to her earlier today, and she told me she bought my book because I've been promoting it, and I was like, don't read it. I was like, don't read it. Like, she's like, no, I'm gonna read it. I'm like, yeah, but it's so dark, and you can see I'm a bubbly, upbeat
Yeah.
person, and then I think it's hard because some of my poems are just, that's like the really vulnerable, the darker side. Like, I go to the dark side in my poetry, and that's not the side of me that most of my friends and family know, because that's not who I am a lot of the time. It's like, writing is how I deal with those feelings, and then they're kind of out of me, and then I get over it, and I can be upbeat and bubbly most of the time. And then, so it's kind of like a side of me they haven't seen as much, and
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't want them to look at me differently, like, oh, I had no idea you felt this way, I guess. I don't really know. I'm trying to be more open with my family and friends about my writing, but definitely never had my mom never on purpose read any of it. She would. I'm sure she would have. I feel like she was probably also a great writer. She read so much,
Yeah.
and she actually, she would write in this notebook. We have a cabin in upstate New York, my family. And she would, when we would go there, that was her time to write, and she would write in the notebook everything that happened that whole year. Like, that was like her journal. Like, we would spend a week at the cabin, and she would just write everything. Like, and my brother did this. Like, this is everything that happened in the last year, the highlights. And nobody can read her handwriting. Like, nobody can read it. It's like a struggle, and she kept, like, that's our whole life is in there if you can decipher it. It's like, you know
Yeah.
so she did also write a bit, but that was usually reserved for, like, vacation. Yeah.
Do you still have any of those notebooks?
I am sure I could ask my dad. I'm sure he has them. I haven't been to the cabin in a very long time, just because it's far, and I don't even know. There's a lot going on, and it's like only open in the summer. And last year the whole plumbing wasn't working. Like, they had to, like, gut the whole plumbing system. It was like a whole disaster. And it was already, like, it's like a very ramshackle cabin. It's like a step above camping. So I'm not
It's
as
rustic.
outdoorsy. It's rustic. Yes, it's very rustic. So I'm sure those notebooks are somewhere. And we would call it the book because it started out as one book. It was the book. Um, Obviously it
Yeah.
evolved as time went on, but yeah, I'm sure I could find it, or ask my dad. I think, oh, he was just up there, so I could probably ask him what happened to the book. That's actually been on my to-do list for quite a while. I'm, like, very curious to read
Yeah.
what's in the book. Yeah, and she would read it, after, like, maybe 5 years later. She would go back and find the old book and then pull it out and be like, this is what we did whatever summer, and
Yeah.
this is what we were doing, and she would write these things down. So it was just, yeah, because I think her memory was, like, she just had a lot in her head.
Yeah. So she had to
So
get it somewhere.
so she had to get it somewhere, because otherwise she would forget. Like I said, she would read a book halfway through and be like, oh, I already read this. So she would be like, I need to remember all these things, and she would write things down. So yeah, I'm sure I could find the book somewhere.
I'll say this: if you get a chance, you should. I have a couple of cookbooks that belong to my grandmother who passed away last year, and
Hmm.
I haven't actually made anything out of any of the books yet. But just being able to go back and, like, look at her handwriting in this cookbook, there's just something very. It makes me feel very close to her. Um,
Yeah,
so even if you
yeah,
can't read it, it's cool to have it, just be able to see it and just know, like,
just
okay,
to
that
see
was a
it.
piece of that
Yeah,
person.
I mean, I'm sure I could. It would be a struggle. I think I could probably figure out a lot of it. But yeah, her handwriting was just, oof, it was hard. It was hard to read. Like, her ends looked like W's sometimes. Like, what? How does that even happen? Like, just her handwriting was so, just, oh my goodness. And my handwriting's not the
Ugh.
neatest, but yeah. readable though.
Well, I was gonna say I can't judge. My handwriting is it is a step above chicken scratch. It is not. I've got the handwriting of a doctor, but not the brain, which is really I kind of get the short end of the stick.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I appreciate you telling me more about her and just in that love of reading. And yeah, I think it's cool that that love of reading that she has, and now you're a writer, and too that that's something you wanted to do as a child, and now I mean you are that thing. You've put out 4 books. You are a writer, and that's I have tremendous respect for that. Um,
Thank
I do want
you.
to switch it up. Just oh, you're welcome. I do want to
Yeah.
switch to kind of the next part though, which is this podcast talks about grief, and a big part of that is food and how food can play a part in grieving and how we can have memories tied to people through food. So I always ask guests about foods that remind them of a loved one. You had some interesting
Yeah.
you had some interesting
Chicken
responses. You want to tell me a
parm.
little bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah. Chicken parm was my mom's signature. I think because, like I said, there were 4 kids. And also there's in the neighborhood I grew up in, there's 2 delis. There's the like the Manor Deli. I grew up on Long Island. There's the Manor Deli and then the Italian Deli. And the Manor Deli is like very popular. And my mom, for some reason, always thought that the Italian deli was struggling. And she would always, I don't know if that's true. That was just what is in her head. So she would like to get food from there because it wasn't as popular, but the food was good. It just wasn't as popular. So she would pick up chicken cutlets from the Italian deli that were already like breaded and fried and whatever, and their sauce. So she didn't even really like do the cooking, and she had 4 kids, and it was one thing that all of her children would eat. So she'd just like make the pasta, chicken parm, like it was just. And then she would kind of try to, yeah. So the interesting thing, like um, she would try to experiment with a lot of different foods because we're eating chicken. She's got 4 kids. I'm sure she got sick of chicken parm. I actually just made chicken parm for the first time in years the other day. There's some in the fridge, and I was like, I'm gonna make it. I don't know. I just made chicken parm. I guess because we were talking, emailing, and then I thought of it. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, she would try to experiment, and her 2 favorite spices to randomly throw into things that did not go with them. It was one or the other. She would either put in cinnamon into a savory dish, which to me, cinnamon is not a savory spice, or she would just overload it with fennel, which is like not a like it's not garlic, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
fennel. Fennel is pretty strong. I don't know. So I just
Yeah.
have all these memories of eating like so much fennel and like eating like a meatball or like eating a meatball or something like and I like Swedish meatballs and I'd be like eating a meatball, there'd just be like a burst of cinnamon in my mouth. It's like, why are you doing this? Like what? Who puts cinnamon in their meatballs? Like it was just like she was a kooky lady, but she would be like, I'm trying something different. I'm trying like that's what she would always say. And like we actually at one point I think my dad hid the cinnamon and the fennel. Like he's like put it in like a different part of the house. Like because he didn't want her. It was just like he was so sick
I
of
mean,
those 2 spices. Um it was just those were the 2. She would go back and forth and just like throw them into random things. Like it was like a phase. Like she would spend like 3 weeks throwing fennel into everything, and then like the next 3 weeks throwing cinnamon into everything, and then she'd go back to normal, and then she'd go back to cinnamon, and then fennel. It was just like so it was always like and she would get really mad when people didn't like it, or like she would be like, "Why are you making a face?" And I'm like, this isn't like great. She's like, if you don't like it, don't eat it. I'm like, I'm hungry. Like, what? I'm a child. Like, okay. Like, I'm like, what are my other options? Like, I don't know. She was a kooky lady.
I
Yeah.
so I've got to. I mean, I'm curious. What is chicken parm with cinnamon? What is that like? I mean, is
It's
it bad or is
exactly
it
what it
just
sounds like.
confusing?
No, it's bad. It's bad. It's just bad. It's exactly what it sounds like. Imagine you're eating chicken parm and then all of a sudden you taste cinnamon. Like You can try it. It's not good though. Like I don't recommend it. Um, yeah, yeah, she was just she was a kooky lady. I don't know. I don't know where she got that idea. I think because um I have heard of there is some savory dish that it's like the secret ingredient is like a sprinkle of cinnamon. I can't think of what it is, but that's what she definitely heard that on like Oprah or something, and then like just went overboard with the sprinkle of cinnamon, but in
May-
everything. I don't. She definitely heard some cooking tip or something. She's like, "What? It's good." It's like, okay, I don't know, cinnamon and fennel. Those were the two, and I never use them now either. It's like I can't. I was like I can't. Had enough in my life.
Well, no,
Yeah,
what you have to do now is you have to use them, but you have to find a way to use them that like it works for the dish. Like make like a
that works
pumpkin
for
pie
the
with the
dish.
cinnamon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I mean, I think I put a little bit. I do put a little bit of cinnamon when I make sweet potatoes at Thanksgiving. I think, like I'll eat a Cinnabon if it's there, but like
Not with chicken
I
parm.
definitely wouldn't put it in. Yeah, definitely wouldn't put it in my chicken parm or my Swedish meatballs, or beef stroganoff or whatever. Oh my god, yeah, that is another memory. Beef stroganoff with cinnamon in it for sure. I can taste it right now. Not good. It's not good.
Hey, but you know what? Though I respect that she tried something different, and I also
Yeah,
the fact that you
yeah.
said that you had to make chicken parm again just because I know we were emailing back and forth and that one came up. So
I just
when you
think
were
it gave
making
me
this
the
the other night,
idea. Yeah.
yeah, it's a it when you were making it, did it kind of make did it? Because I've had people that say that it kind of feels like they're connecting back to that person, but it's just nice to bring up that memory through that dish. Did you feel any of that?
I don't even think I was thinking about it. Like I didn't even realize that I was making it because we were talking about it. I was just like, you know what I haven't had in a while? Chicken parm. And then I made it. But now that we're talking about it again, I'm like, oh yeah. And I made it. And my mom also used to, instead of like baking with the cheese on top of the chicken and then like baking it, she would just like sprinkle shredded cheese
Yeah.
in it. So there'd just be like a lot of melted cheese in the sauce. That was how I made it. Like this, I actually said to my fiance, I was like, I'm going to make chicken parm the way my mom made it, not with like cinnamon in it. But I was like, I'm just going to like sprinkle the cheese in, the melty, like, I was like, I'm not gonna like bake this and make it all nice. I was like, I'm just gonna throw it in a skillet and whatever. So yeah, I like that. I like the melty cheese all throughout the sauce. I do like that way, and that was how she did it.
That
Yeah,
that does sound really good.
yeah. And actually, for Valentine's Day, I think the last time I had chicken parm was Valentine's Day. I went to my fiance took me to a really nice Italian restaurant that we had never been to before, and I got the chicken parm there. And I remember being like, "Oh, they put the cheese on top." Being like, not like just like kind of because I forgot that that's how it's normally served. I was like, "Oh, okay." I was definitely thinking of my mom that time. I was definitely like, I was kind of like, okay. I was like, Mom, you did it better, I guess. I don't know. It was good chicken parm. Not to say anything bad. It was a very nice restaurant. It was good chicken
Yeah.
parm. Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say I'm not sure I'm sold on the cinnamon, but the cheese in the sauce that does sound really good. I'll have to try that next time.
Yeah, definitely get some
Um,
shred the mozzarella and just sprinkle it in so it kind of like melts throughout the sauce. It's really good. It is really good that way.
that does sound good. Now, what else? I know the chicken parm was that I'm glad you started with that because I needed to know more about that. But I know you also
Yeah.
said that you'd go to diners with her regularly as well, correct?
Yeah. So, like I said, okay, my mom did not have an easy life, and so actually, when I was in high school, I think it was because it was after her parents passed away, and she had had such like growing up as a teenager and young adult, like up until her kids were born, she had such a challenging relationship with her parents. I think she really wanted to connect with me more. Um, and yeah, I guess it was after her parents passed away, and she and I were not very close at the time. I was very angsty. I had a lot of mental health problems that were just starting to crop up. Like I have bipolar disorder, um, and
Yeah.
I knew as a teenager like that something was wrong, and it was very scary. Um, and I didn't, and I was too scared to talk to anybody about like what was going on in my head, because I knew I was mentally ill. Like I knew something was wrong. Um, which is also
Yeah.
why I write a lot of poetry and have a lot of younger, like if my young fans reach out to me, by the way, young people, if you're listening to this, don't DM strange adults on Instagram, okay? Just PSA. I am a
You know
safe
what?
adult, which is fine, but like don't do that. Okay, anyway, a lot of my young fans will
No,
reach out to
that's good
me.
advice.
Yeah, I know, like my young fans, like a 15-year-old. I actually updated my Instagram, so now you have to be 18 or older to follow me, because I'm just like I do want to be that voice for young people, but like a 15-year-old will message me and like ask me life advice. I'm like, why are you? I mean, like I get it, and I try to be the person that I needed when I was a teenager, but I'm also like, don't
Oh.
DM random adults on Insta. Like that's just, it's not safe. Like, don't do that. Don't do that if you're a teenager. Oh
Yeah.
my
That
god. Oh my
no,
god.
you're
Sorry.
right though, because I mean,
That's
you
my own
wanna.
brand. Yeah.
No, but that's okay, and you can rant about that because yeah, you want
Yeah.
to give them because kids need safety, and not all kids have that readily available to them. But
Right.
you're right. As a
Right.
general rule of thumb, don't reach out to adults you don't know. That's just not good. I yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I am a safe adult, but I every time I chastise them. I'll be like, why are you messaging me? I'm like, you don't know me. Like what? It's been a while since somebody that young has reached out to me. I think also because I updated my page, and I do want to be there for like the younger generation, but time and place for everything. So yeah, I think I had a lot going on, to get back to the point, and I think she just knew stuff was off with me, and I was definitely trying to keep her at a distance, and she was definitely trying to break through that barrier. So she basically told me that we were going to hang out. This was not really a choice. She told me we were going to do something, a choice of, she gave me a few choices, but one time a week I had to spend at least an hour of quality time with her, and just the two of us. And she let me pick. Like she said, we can go shopping. She's like, I'll buy you a new pair of jeans every week, whatever you want. I'm not a shopper. Well, now I am more, but I'm not a clothes. Neither of us are fashionistas. My mom, oh my god, my mom's horrible at clothing. That's a whole other podcast. My mom's choice in clothing. But yeah, so I didn't like trying on clothes like that. To me, going shopping with my mom once a week was a nightmare. But whereas, some people are like, what? You got to have new things every week? What? Like, but I chose to go with her to breakfast or to brunch. I think also, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm having a brunch wedding next year, and brunch has always been like a special place in my heart. I don't know why I love brunch. So maybe that's like part of it
Yeah.
too, is that like brunch maybe makes me feel closer to her. But we would go to brunch once a week, like Saturday or Sunday. And I always got chocolate chip pancakes. They're my favorite. I love chocolate chip pancakes and a chocolate milkshake. And every time she'd be like, aren't you going to get something different? I'm like, no, this is what I wanted. I wanted chocolate chip pancakes every week. You said I could have a free thing every week. I want chocolate chip pancakes. Like, that's what I wanted. She got a lot of omelets. She would always get something. She had a couple things she would probably rotate through. I can picture her eating an omelet for sure, and hash browns. And I can like picture the diner. and me being so frustrated that I had to be there, and her trying so hard to connect with me, and me just like stonewalling her, being like, I'm here, I'm eating breakfast, we're getting through this, that's it. Like, not even, like, she'd be like, how's your week? I'd be like, fine. You know, like, I I don't know. I had a lot of angst as a teenager. So yeah, and so yeah, she was kind of like I said, like the boundaries weren't her strongest place. So like her being like, well, we're doing this because I need to connect with my daughter. It was kind of like, you know, a little I don't know the right word for it, but a little pushy. It was probably more pushy than I needed at the time. But she was trying, you know, she
Yeah.
was trying for
Well,
sure.
yeah, and it's one of those sometimes. I mean, especially in the moment, like because I remember being a teenager. I'm a long way from a teenager now, but I remember being a teenager, and yeah, there it's sometimes you just want to be left alone. You want to be able to
Yeah.
just be angsty. I remember that feeling oh so well. Like let me just sit here and just be mad. But
Yeah, I
that's
think that's also, I captured a lot of that in my book, Sad Girl Quotes. Like, that was me going, I'm going to channel my inner angsty teen and get that out in a book. And, like,
yeah.
that was that book. I just really was like, I'm going to be as, and the back cover actually says, well, maybe I'm just being dramatic. It's like,
I love that.
so, um, but that was, yeah, I think I probably could have used some more space, and she definitely she was trying. I mean, you know, she was flawed. She did her best though, for sure.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, this is, I think, some one of the benefits of getting older and maturing in adulthood. You can appreciate that. Yeah, boundaries would have been important, but you can also appreciate that. Hey, she was trying and making an effort. Um,
Yeah. And I think that if she were alive now, I would definitely be able to have the types of conversations with her that I'm having with you, where I'm like, hey, you didn't respect my boundaries as a teenager. And she would probably be like, you know what, I was doing my best. You know what I mean? Like, she was very reasonable. It
yeah,
might be a fight at first, but I think she would come around eventually. I mean, I don't know though. You know,
yeah.
that's the hardest part of grief, I think, is the what ifs, you know, I mean, that's definitely the hardest part, the what ifs.
Okay, so that's interesting that you say that. So you talk about the what ifs. Is that something that you've in the time since her passing that you've had to wrestle with the what ifs? I mean, is that something that weighs on you, or is that something that's still there?
I mean, I try not to think about it too much. Like, honestly, that's probably something I should explore more, like in therapy or something, not just on my own.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it's something I try not to think about, but I definitely get angry when people say, oh, well, your mother would never, or she would be upset if you did this, or she would never stand for that or whatever. And I'm like, she's not here. I'm like, she's not. Like, I get angry and defensive sometimes. I'm definitely working on that. But I'm like, I get mad when people are like, oh, your mother would have been so proud. I'm like, like, she's not here. Oh, like, even if it's a good thing, you know what I mean? Or,
yeah.
oh, she would be so upset, and it's like, but she can't be. She's not. So I get, like, I definitely, that's like a little bit of an anger trigger for me sometimes. But I think more the what ifs lately have been coming up because, like I said, my fiance, I'm engaged, I'm getting married next year. And like every once in a while, it's like, oh my God, my mom's not going to be at my wedding. Like, which is a reality I've faced before. And like when she was sick with her cancer, that was a
Yeah.
thought that I had was, oh my God, my mom's not going to be at my wedding. Um, and also, like, I get upset over like petty little things about it too, because like today I just scheduled my first appointment for my wedding dress fitting to try on dresses. And like, that's something my mom would have come to and she would have paid for my dress. And now I'm like, oh my God, I think I have to pay for my own wedding dress. What kind of BS is that? I'm like, who's paying for this? Which is reason, like she would have given me like a very reason, like a budget, and she would have been like, if I found something slightly over that budget, she would have splurged or whatever. You know what I mean? Like she would want me to have the right dress within reason,
Yeah.
but she also would know that I'm not a bridezilla. Like I'm not like I need to spend $10,000 on my dress. You know what I mean? I'm like, let's try to keep it reasonable, which is how it would be even if she was, even if it wasn't me spending my money. Like if it was me spending her money, I would still be like, let's try to keep it reasonable. I'm not going to spend $10,000 on a dress that I'm going to wear once. You know what I mean? Like that's not who I am. And I'm very
I couldn't do that
exaggerating
either.
the price. I'm very exaggerating the price so I don't offend anyone who's like, I spent, however much on my dress because I think 10,000 is a little over the top. And watch, someone's still gonna be offended and like, but that's just not who I am. If that's your
The
budget,
wedding
great for
thing,
you. Yeah,
the wedding thing, I'm like, man, that you can spend a lot of money. My wife and I, we went to the courthouse, and I think my suit cost about $100. Her dress wasn't much more, and we only spent $20 to the ceremony. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but
I mean, we're doing something a little bit bigger. My younger brother basically did that, and then yeah, we're doing something a little more just because I don't know. It's not like it's traditional. It's small for the fact that we both have big families. We're gonna have about
uh,
80 people. So that's small, and that was like we're keeping it down. I could have easily had a 200-person wedding. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
um, that was the hard part with being like, who is absolutely necessary. But we have our guest list, I think. So yeah, and we're doing brunch, which is actually like it's not like a traditional wedding venue. It's a restaurant. It's gonna be in the courtyard. It's gonna be like, yeah, it's definitely budget friendly. Not as not as
that's
budget
awesome.
friendly as yours, but I would love to do that. But I also really there's a lot of people that I want to celebrate with too. You know what I mean? And I feel like my
Well,
sister will probably do like what you did. If I had to guess, she'll probably elope. I don't even know. I don't know. I don't know. I could be wrong. She could already be married. I wouldn't even know. She would not even surprise me if she's like, just so you know, I got married last weekend. I'd be like, cool. Be like, good for you. She is
well,
engaged, to be fair. Like, she lives with her partner. It's not like, oh, I just wouldn't be surprised if she like randomly like, or if she told me like, hey, I got married 6 months ago. I'd be like, good for you. Like, that wouldn't surprise me. That would not surprise me.
yeah,
She definitely doesn't want a big thing. So yeah, and I think part of why she doesn't want a big thing is because like, oh my God, my mom's not going to be there. It's like it's too
uh,
much because she's very sensitive, my sister. So yeah,
yeah. Well, and I'm a firm believer to a wedding. That's what we did, but I really think the wedding's got to come down to the two people getting married. Those are the ones that matter. I think it can
yeah,
sometimes get turned into about everybody else. Screw them. I think as long as you and your fiance are happy, that's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters.
yeah, yeah, and that's why like am I making people get up pretty early to get ready and go to the church pretty early? Like, yeah, because I wanted to do brunch though. That was like the one big thing I wanted. Like, I was like, I want to have brunch.
Yeah,
Too bad. Like, we're not gonna have a big nighttime thing. I want to have brunch, and that's what we're doing. So, yeah, it's my thing. I'm like, at least I'm not making you do a sunrise wedding because my fiance would never agree to that. I'm like, I could get married at sunrise on the beach. I think that would be very romantic.
yeah,
I know my fiance would never agree to that in a million years, but, but
yeah,
we compromise. We're having brunch.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and look, I'm just gonna say it right now that to me that sounds perfect because one, you mentioned earlier that you love brunch. Everyone should love brunch. Brunch is great. So right there,
yeah,
that's perfect. And then two, you got the rest. Once the wedding's over, you got the rest of the day. You can relax. I mean, that just seems honestly
yeah.
early weddings. That should be the norm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just also like the getting ready in the morning. Like I remember like my brother and sister-in-law's wedding, like we all like the whole bridal party. Like they had a big wedding. And I have two brothers, so my older brother's wedding.
Yeah.
I remember we were getting ready for hours, but it's because you have like six people and there's only one person doing all the hair and all the makeup. So it's just like you're just like sitting there waiting for your hair to get done, for your makeup to get done. You know what I mean? Like it's just hours of getting ready
Yeah.
for so because it takes, the hairstyling doesn't come, that quickly, but I'm only having a couple people and we'll figure it out. Hopefully. I mean, I feel like the day's going to start at 5 a.m. probably, but I'm okay with that. I wake up early. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you congratulations early. I'm very happy
Thank
for
you.
you.
Thank you.
I am biased, but being married is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm like. I'm excited, and I love to hear that from people. Like, I hate that. Like, that's the one thing about like some of the older generation, like old comedians would be like, my wife's terrible. It's like, why? Like, you married them for a reason. You know what I mean? Like, I love to hear
Yeah,
when people are like happy in their
I'm with
relationship.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and you're right though. Like the old like jokes about that's very hack. I hate that. It's like you said.
yeah,
You get married for a reason, and I will
yeah.
tell you, it is work, but it is worth it.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. So I'm optimistic and yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, I mean, I'm engaged. I hope I'm excited. If there's a
That's
time to
awesome.
be excited about it, it's now.
Um, I, yeah. Now, I do have a few more questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I did want to ask, so I know you said that you wrote your book of poetry about, and it was largely inspired by your mother's passing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, did it, how did it help you through the grieving process? Because I know that writing can be very therapeutic, but how did it help you?
Wow. Yeah. I would say that putting together the collection was not only helpful, but it was necessary. Like it was necessary work. I I definitely I don't even I don't remember how I picked the poems because I was writing and I was posting on Instagram every day and under like a fake name and then I changed it to my real name and it was like a whole thing. But I I was just writing a lot and then I was choosing kind of like the poems I thought were like the best, I guess. I don't really know how I chose what to post and what to put in the book, but I'm happy with the way the book turned out. It definitely helped me to really, it kind of gave me the space I needed to actually sit and focus my thoughts. Like it definitely helped me sort through my feelings and because I mean, that's the thing. If people say like poet or writer, and what I really feel like for me, the art is I really feel like I'm a wordsmith, like a
Mm.
crafter of words. Like that's what I most identify with as like within the genre of writing. Like as I feel like it's a craft, and it gives kind of like the structure to my emotions. It helps me get a lot of my thoughts out of my head. I also, like I said, I have bipolar disorder, and I didn't get diagnosed until I was 25. And I knew, and like I said, I knew when I was like 15. So that's like 10
Yeah.
years of suffering, knowing something's wrong and being too scared to go deal with it. Um, so, and like I didn't get diagnosed until after my mom had passed away, and like all this stuff. So, um, and actually, I don't even know when I would have gotten diagnosed if she hadn't passed away because, like, just so many things like snowballed. And then, that led to me getting into therapy and then, getting to a psychiatrist eventually and getting a diagnosis. And so, I mean, yeah, when I'm not on my medication, which, like, by the way, if you need mental health medication, take it, please. Um,
Yes.
I mean, for me, it calms my brain. So, like, part of the bipolar is like racing thoughts, and So a lot of the writing was just like frantic scribbling to get those thoughts in order, because it's just like it's like I try to explain it where it's like when I'm not on my medication, it's like I have like 12 trains of thought going on in my head in all different directions all at the same time, and like three of them will be the focused on the thing I'm saying, right? They're all going in the same direction, and those are three trains of thought. And then I have one that's just circling some song lyric that's just spinning in a circle. A train just spinning in a circle, some song lyric in the background, like never gonna give you up, just going back around and round and round while I'm talking with three trains to talk, and then like that spinning in the background, and then like something else is going on over here. So it kind of helps me get all like those trains of thought together and be like this. It like helps me focus all the mush in my head and make everything go in one direction so that I could actually um, like sort through the feelings. Now that I'm on medication, I would say I have, everybody has a couple trains of thought, not quite 12, but it definitely has calmed everything down a lot. So yeah, I think that writing open wounds really, before my medication, definitely really helped me to focus my thoughts and get them out. And it's also really cathartic, just to
Yeah.
get like to release that. Like I am very big on not just writing but talking to friends, and when I have like sometimes I just need to say a thought that I keep having just so that I stop having it. If that makes any sense. Like it could be like I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, and then I say I'm hungry, and then someone's like, okay, eat something, and then I eat something, and then my brain's like, I'm not hungry anymore. Like it's kind of like that, but like I don't have to. That was a bad example, but just to get like a thought out of my head, just to say it out loud, um, to make it just, I don't know. So writing it down also helped, and especially because, like I said, I was scared and I was mentally ill and knew it and was scared of that. It helped me to kind of cope with that because I didn't feel like I could tell a lot of these things to anybody. Um, and then,
Yeah.
but of course, I published it in a book for the world to read. But like, it felt like I couldn't tell, my friends. So it's just, yeah. And now looking back on it, I'm still like, wow, this was intense. But yeah, I don't know if I even answered your question.
No, I think you. I think you
Yeah.
did. I mean, because it's. I asked the question, but I mean, I don't feel like that's something. I don't feel like something that major and that big of a milestone's not the right word, but that big of a life event. I don't feel like it's something that you could succinctly say that, oh yes, this helped me because of X, Y, and Z. I mean, it's such a major thing,
Yeah. I mean,
and it.
it helped me organize my thoughts and get some things out so that my brain wasn't repeating them over and over. And I actually like, you know how people get like songs stuck in their head. Like I get words and phrases stuck in my
Yeah.
head. Like sometimes they're from TV shows, sometimes they're poems I've written. When I do, I have one of them pulled up already. I'm not going to read it right now, but when I read later, it's the one called Death, and that one gets stuck in my head a lot. I will, yeah, it just, I just like hear it over and over again. And that I wrote 5 years ago, and it'll randomly pop into my head. That one and Catharsis, like some of these from like from my first book, like they'll just pop into my head, and I'm like, wow, that was really well crafted. Like, I'm like, but also it's like sad. It's just like, but sometimes it gets stuck in my head because it's like it's almost catchy, I guess. The words just kind of stick. So yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean, art is always therapeutic, or maybe not always, but it can be very therapeutic.
I definitely agree. If even if it's bad, it's sometimes it's just good to get it out of your head. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
just and it's there's a Vonnegut quote I love. Yeah, there's a quote I love by Kurt Vonnegut where he talks about, creating art in any way, shape, or form is good. Essentially, just because you will have created something, and I think it's true. I think just being able to create something and get it out of your head and just make art is just it is a very human thing, and I think it is really important.
Yeah, I love Kurt Vonnegut, and yeah, his some of his lines definitely get stuck in my head. And so on. Like I just say that. I'm like, and so on. So it goes. I know that those are like very general things, but those are very Kurt Vonnegut, and so on, and also so it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
I
I
actually
love
have a "So
Vonnegut.
It Goes" tattooed on my foot.
That's awesome. I love Vonnegut. I love him. Um, my favorite is when he puts himself into the stories. And he's like, the one where he has food poisoning. Do you know what I'm talking about? In Slaughterhouse-Five, he has food poisoning. That's like
Yes,
so
it's
fun.
been a long time.
It's just very funny to me, the scene where he goes, like the main character Billy Pilgrim is like wherever he is, and then Kurt Vonnegut goes and he overheard somebody say, "I've shit out everything but my brains." Oh, there they go. And that to me is just such a funny line. Like that's like I've shit out everything but my brains. Oh no, there they go. And he's like, and that was me, the author of this book. Like that was when he put himself in the book. Like, I love that. Like that's
That's great.
so funny. Um, yeah, like I love when he just does that, and then like or whatever other one where his character recognizes that he's the author of the story. He goes, he's my only character who ever was like intelligent enough to recognize that I was the one writing his life or whatever. I forget which book that is, but I'm like, that's insane. Like, whoa. That was I
Was
forget.
that Breakfast of Champions?
Yes, that's Breakfast of Champions. There we go. Yes, that one's gonna kill me. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Um, well, hey, Michelle, I appreciate so much what you've shared with me. I do have just one or two more things.
Yeah.
But I know you talked a little bit at the beginning of the show about your books of poetry. I want to hear about that one more time. Before we do that, though,
Yes.
I always like to end every episode by talking to my guests and asking them if you had a chance to share one more meal with your mom, what meal would you want to have with her?
Brunch. I would want to do brunch, and I'd want to go to a diner, and I'd have chocolate chip pancakes for sure. I would have chocolate chip pancakes and chocolate milkshake, and yeah, for sure. I and she could get an omelet or whatever because she loves cheese too, a cheesy omelet. Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. That's a good question.
Go have some chocolate chip pancakes for her, okay?
I'm I will next time I go to the diner. I will. I
Michelle, thank you
rarely
so
eat them
much for
now. They're
joining me
too
this
sweet.
evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that is one of the things that sucks about getting older is like sugary stuff just gets it's too sweet now, and I hate that
It's
because
too
I don't
sweet.
get
Yeah.
yeah, you can't enjoy it as much anymore. It
I
sucks.
know. Yeah. I know. Like, I would love to have chocolate chip pancakes and a chocolate milkshake. It sounds so good. And I'm like, I know I'd have like four bites and then be like, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. You know? I would do it though. I would do it if she were around. I'd be like, let's go for old time's sake, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before I let you go, will you tell us again where we can find you, your books, and
Yeah,
yeah, I'd appreciate that.
I'm on Amazon. My author name is m.k.malon. That's like Malone with no E. I'll send you the link to my author page. It has all like a little bio about me. It has all my books. I'm on Instagram at Michelle underscore with two L's, Michelle with two L's underscore Malon. That's like Malone with no E underscore. Um, and I'll send you that info too. Yeah, if you want to read a lot of like lovey-dovey stuff, that's what I post lately on Instagram, and some stuff about my books because I just relaunched Open Wounds. but I'll be posting probably a lot more love poems lately since I am engaged and that's what's going on. I try to post all my life. So, yeah. And yeah, the books are Open Wounds. That's mostly what we talked about. And then my newest collection, which is the response to Open Wounds, is My Healing Heart. Yeah.
Thank you. And you told me about the concept of that, of responding to it a few years later, and I love that concept so much. And I know
Yeah.
we're gonna have some of your poetry here in in the episode. So thank you so much. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This was fun as a podcast about grief can be.
Yeah, it's never like a real jovial thing, but I hope, my hope is always that people, after talking with me, that I don't want you to be depressed. My
Right.
hope is always that you've had a chance to talk about somebody, that meant a lot to you, that you care about, and it can be a way of honoring them. So that's, yeah, I know it's I don't know that anyone ever gets off the call and says, "Man, that was a really good time talking about all that." But
It was a good time though. I mean, I might feel differently after I read some of my poems because I'm going to be a little bit more serious when I read them. But yeah,
oh, well, thank you so much.
yeah. Thanks for having me. Catharsis. In the shower, in the darkness, begging the water to wash the pain away, hoping, no praying for catharsis. And then the response is titled Ho'oponopono. There is catharsis in forgiveness. I release the anger, grief, and pain. I am letting it go, washing it out like dirt down the drain.
Thank you once again to Michelle for joining me today and sharing her story as well as her poetry. You can get her books on Amazon, and you can also follow her on social media. I'm going to link up to all of that in the show notes as always. And I encourage you, go out and support her, support an artist. Yeah, there's not really much more I can say other than support art. I think that's important. I think we need the arts. I will always call out, I don't get anything from links to Amazon. So if you are worried that I am like somehow nefariously trying to get your money by linking you to stuff, I'm not. It's just something I want to make sure I support the people that take the time to speak with me. So please go and support Michelle. You can subscribe to Our Last Mill wherever you're listening, and please take the time to rate it and review it so that other people can find this podcast, and please share it with other people too. If you know somebody who is grieving, who has grieved, even there are times when somebody, they know the grief is coming. I've spoken with people, about that pre-grief almost. Please share. I hope that this podcast can provide something to anyone who listens to it, even if it's just knowing that they're not alone. If one person can get something out of this, that means I will have done something worthwhile. So please share. You can follow Our Last Mill on social media, Our Last Mill Pod, all of them: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm trying to be better about putting episodes on YouTube, so please go check that out. You can also go to ourlastmill.com or email ourlastmillpod@gmail.com. If you're interested in being on the show, reach out to me. I would love to talk with you and let you share your story and honor a loved one. You can also go to that website, ourlastmill.com. You can go to share your story at the top, and you can submit it that way, and I'll reach out to you. With all of that said, until next time, please take care of yourselves and share a meal with someone you care about.